The sound of skin meeting skin should have echoed through the cabin, but it didn't. What followed the slap was worse. Silence, thick, heavy, the kind that presses on your chest and makes breathing feel loud. Every conversation died at once. Champagne glasses froze mid-air. A movie paused on a screen 3 rows back, and in the narrow aisle of first class, every single eye locked onto the same moment. One of the twins stood there with his hand slowly lowering to his side. It trembled, but not from fear. It trembled from restraint, from the effort it took not to do more. His brother stood beside him, shoulders squared, jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his face jumped. His eyes were burning, not wild, not angry in the way people expected, but focused, controlled, dangerous only if you believed the story already forming in the air. Across from them, a wealthy white man clutched his forearm like it had been broken. His voice cut through the silence, sharp and loud, cracking with outrage. He pointed with his free hand, shaking it toward the twins like a weapon of its own. "They threatened me," he shouted. "They just snapped out of nowhere." The words landed before the truth could, and everyone heard them. Flight attendants rushed down the aisle, heels clicking too fast, smiles gone. Someone gasped. Someone else leaned into the aisle to get a better look. Phones appeared quietly, one by one, screens glowing like small eyes. Whispers rippled through leather seats and crystal glasses. 2 black men, identical, tall, well-dressed, calm, collected, and suddenly, in the story being told without their consent, dangerous. "Sir, please step back," a flight attendant said, but her eyes were already on the twins. Not on the man yelling, not on the accusation hanging in the air, on them. The twin who had lowered his hand took a slow breath. He could feel his heartbeat in his ears, not from panic, from memory, from knowing how fast moments like this could turn, from knowing how little it sometimes took for calm to be mistaken for guilt. Just minutes earlier, none of this existed. The flight had been routine, first class, New York to London, the kind of cabin where voices stayed low and problems were handled quietly. The twins had boarded together, rolling their carry-ons in sync without trying to. They nodded politely at the attendant, smiled, took their seats, window and aisle, same row, same posture, same quiet confidence. They wore tailored suits, dark and clean, the kind that didn't shout wealth but didn't apologize either. One had adjusted his cufflinks while the other buckled his seatbelt. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, nothing wrong. But discomfort followed them anyway. It started with the looks, quick glances that lingered too long, eyes that scanned them and then darted away when caught. A woman across the aisle tightened her grip on her purse without realizing she'd done it. A man 2 rows up leaned over and whispered something to his wife, who glanced back at the twins and frowned. Then came the comments. Soft at first, almost playful, almost joking. "Are you sure you're in the right section?" a man said with a chuckle that wasn't really a joke. He had said it like a question, but it wasn't one. It was a test. One of the twins had smiled politely. "Yes, sir," he said, calm, respectful, seat 2A and 2 degrees Celsius. The man laughed again, louder this time, and shook his head as if amused by something only he understood. The moment passed, but it didn't disappear. It sat there, settling into the space between seats. Drinks were served. The cabin hummed back to life, but the air around the twins stayed tight. Then the spill happened. It was small, accidental. A flight attendant bumped into a shoulder as she reached across the aisle. A glass tilted. Amber liquid splashed onto the lap of one twin, soaking into his trousers. The cold shock made him flinch. "Oh, I'm so sorry," the attendant said quickly, already reaching for napkins. "It's okay," he replied. His voice stayed even. "Could I just have a little space, please?" That was it. That was all. But the man across from them leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Don't raise your voice at her," he snapped. The twin blinked, confused. "I didn't," he said, still calm. "Yes, you did," the man insisted, louder now. "I heard you. You don't need to get aggressive." Aggressive. The word dropped heavy between them. "I'm not being aggressive," the twin said, hands open, palms visible. "I just asked for space." The man scoffed. "Unbelievable," he muttered, but he wasn't done. His chair scraped as he stood halfway up, looming just enough to feel intentional. "You people always take things too far." That's when the other twin stood. Slowly, carefully. He didn't rush, he didn't shout. He simply placed himself beside his brother, a quiet wall of presence. "Sir," he said, voice low, "let's just calm this down." That should have been the end of it. Instead, it became the beginning. "Don't tell me to calm down," the man snapped, his face red now. You think you can intimidate me? No one else spoke. No one stepped in. The cabin watched, waiting. Then the shove came. It wasn't hard, it didn't need to be. A hand pressed against the twins' chest. Just enough, just deliberate enough to cross a line, just subtle enough that some people might pretend they hadn't seen it. Everything after that happened fast. Voices raised, a chair bumped. The twin felt his balance shift for half a second, felt the familiar heat rush up his spine. Years of discipline held him in place until instinct took over. The slap wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to stop, and it did, for 1 second. Then the shouting started. "He attacked me!" the man yelled, grabbing his arm as if struck by something far worse. These guys just snapped, completely out of control. And now, here they were, frozen in the aftermath, judged before anyone asked what happened. A flight attendant pressed a hand to her earpiece. "We need security," she said quietly, though her eyes flicked to the twins again. "Captain needs to be notified." Another attendant approached the brothers, voice soft but firm. "Gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside to de-escalate the situation. Not him, them." The twin by the aisle let out a slow breath. He felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, the feeling of being measured and found guilty before the scale was even balanced. His brother glanced at him just for a moment. A look passed between them, not fear, not anger, understanding. As they stepped into the aisle, whispers followed them like a current. Someone shook their head. Someone else whispered, "I knew it." A phone tilted to get a better angle. The wealthy man sat back down now, confidence returning to his posture. He crossed his legs, adjusted his watch. The crisis, as far as he was concerned, was already over. One of the twins reached into his jacket. A few passengers gasped, breath catching in their throats. But his hand came back out holding only a phone. He didn't rush. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't explain himself. He simply unlocked the screen, scrolled once, and pressed call. As the line rang, the cabin buzzed with quiet satisfaction. This was how these stories usually went. An apology later, a removal. Maybe a headline no one would remember. The twin lifted the phone to his ear, eyes steady, posture relaxed. "Yes," he said softly as the call connected. "We have a situation." And in that moment, with engines humming and eyes watching and judgment already passed, the balance of power began to shift. But no one in that cabin felt it yet. Not the man clutching his arm. Not the passengers whispering. Not the crew trying to contain the mess. The plane sat at the gate, unaware it was about to go nowhere at all. The separation happens quickly, almost casually, like a routine step no one thinks to question. One twin is guided toward the galley, asked to stand near the metal carts and folded jump seats, away from the eyes of first class but not from judgment. The other is told to return to his seat. Not asked, told. A hand gestures downward, firm but polite, the kind of politeness that hides authority. He sits because he knows what refusing would look like. He sits because experience has taught him when silence is safer than truth. Across the aisle, the man who accused them settles into his seat like a king reclaiming a throne. His back straightens. His breathing slows. His lips curl into something that might pass for concern if you didn't know better. He rolls his shoulder once, as if testing for pain, then lets his arm rest dramatically on the armrest. He knows this part. He has lived this ending before. Men like him always do. Around them, the cabin begins to whisper again, not loud enough to challenge, just loud enough to wound. "They should have stayed in economy," someone mutters, not realizing the words carry farther than intended. "They look aggressive," another voice says, thin and sharp. "They don't belong here," a woman adds, shaking her head as if the conclusion is obvious. Each word lands like a small cut, not fatal on its own, but together they bleed you dry. The twin in the seat keeps his eyes forward, hands folded, jaw locked. He doesn't look at the people speaking. He doesn't need to. He's heard versions of these sentences his entire life, different places, different heights. Same message. Near the galley, the other twin stands tall while a flight attendant speaks to him in a low voice. She reads from memory, from training, from a script designed to protect the company more than the truth. Policy this, procedure that. Her tone is even, but her eyes keep drifting past him, as if searching for something dangerous that isn't there. "Sir, did you make any verbal threats?" she asks. "No," he answers. "Simple, honest. Did you raise your voice?" "No." "Did you touch the other passenger?" "No," he says again, then pauses. "He shoved my brother." The attendant nods, but she doesn't write that down, or if she does, she doesn't look convinced. Another attendant stands nearby, arms crossed, eyes lowered. She avoids eye contact completely, as if looking at him too long might pull her into something she doesn't want to be part of. Back in the seat, the other twin watches all of this unfold without moving. He can feel the eyes on him, the measuring, the weighing. He sits still because stillness is often mistaken for guilt, but movement would be mistaken for something worse. The man across the aisle clears his throat loudly. "I don't feel safe," he announces to no one in particular, but everyone hears it. "I travel all the time, and I've never experienced something like this." He shakes his head slowly, like a man disappointed by the state of the world. "I don't want to make a big deal out of it," he continues. "Already doing exactly that, but I was threatened. I thought I was going to be attacked." The word attacked hangs in the air. Heavy, loaded, a flight attendant leans closer to him, concern painted across her face. "We're so sorry, sir," she says. "We're handling the situation." He nods, satisfied. "I'm a lawyer," he adds casually, as if mentioning the weather. "And I know my rights." Money talks loudly at 30,000 feet, louder than truth. Louder than witnesses. Louder than calm voices trying to explain what really happened. The captain's voice crackles over the intercom. Calm, professional, detached. He announces a delay. Says there's been an incident. Says authorities will be contacted upon landing. Apologizes for the inconvenience. A sigh ripples through the cabin. Not a sigh of outrage. Not a sigh of empathy. A sigh of annoyance. Missed connections. Late meetings. Plans disrupted. The injustice barely registers compared to the delay. The twin near the galley hears it and feels something sink in his chest. This is the part where stories end badly, where calm men are escorted off planes, where videos are clipped and context is lost, where headlines choose sides before facts have a chance. He looks down at the floor for a moment. The pattern is familiar. The altitude is new. Then, somewhere far from the cabin, something shifts. In the cockpit, a light blinks. Then another. A message scrolls across a small screen, one the captain doesn't usually see lit up like this. He leans forward, squints, reads it twice. His CO pilot glances over, then straightens in his seat. "What's that?" the CO pilot asks quietly. The captain doesn't answer right away. He presses a button, listens, then asks a question he didn't expect to ask today. "Can you confirm that?" His voice tightens just slightly. Another message comes in. Then another. Different channels. Same origin. The ground. Not a passenger complaint. Not a social media alert. Something internal. Something official. The captain swallows. He clears his throat. He asks for names. He repeats them slowly, carefully, like he wants to make sure he heard them right. The CO pilot's eyebrows lift. The air in the cockpit changes. The easy rhythm of pre-flight procedures disappears, replaced by something sharper, more alert. A call comes through directly to the cockpit. The captain listens in silence this time. His face shifts. Not fear, not anger, recognition. "Yes," he says finally, "I understand." He ends the call and sits back, hands gripping the controls a little tighter than before. He looks at his CO pilot. "We're not going anywhere," he says. Out in the cabin, no one knows any of this yet. The twins remain where they are, one standing, one seated, waiting. The engines hum to life. The plane begins to move. A few passengers relax, assuming the delay is over. But the motion feels wrong, slow, uneasy. The twin in the seat glances out the window. Instead of the runway stretching ahead, he sees the terminal sliding past. They're taxiing, but not toward takeoff. Murmurs rise. Confused voices. Someone laughs nervously. "What's going on?" The man across the aisle frowns. He leans toward the attendant. "Why aren't we leaving?" She presses her lips together. "Let me check," she says, and walks away quickly. The plane turns slightly, then stops. The engines idle. The silence returns, but it's different now. Thicker. Expectant. The intercom clicks on again. The captain's voice is still calm, but something underneath it has changed. A firmness, a weight. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, "this flight has been grounded pending immediate investigation." A wave of sound crashes through the cabin. Gasps. Protests. Questions fired into the air with no one to answer them. Phones come up again, this time not to record the twins, but to text complaints. The wealthy man's face tightens. "What?" he snaps. "That's ridiculous." Every head turns, slowly, quietly, one by one, toward the twins. But the looks are different now. Not sharp, not certain, no longer satisfied. Uncertainty replaces judgment. Doubt creeps in where confidence once lived. People begin to wonder what kind of call grounds an entire flight. What kind of situation reaches past cabin crew and into the cockpit? The twin near the galley lifts his eyes. He meets the stares without flinching. His brother remains seated, hands still folded, expression unreadable. The story everyone thought they understood no longer makes sense. And as the plane sits frozen between gate and runway, with questions hanging heavier than the air itself, one truth becomes clear. This isn't over. Not even close. The door opens with a sound that doesn't belong to passengers. It's heavier, slower, final. Conversations die the moment it happens. Heads turn before anyone knows why. Shoes step onto the aircraft, not rushed, not cautious either. Controlled, confident, not security, not police. Something else. Men and women in dark suits move down the aisle with quiet authority. No badges swinging, no raised voices, just presence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The captain steps out of the cockpit and speaks to them in a low tone. He nods once, then twice. Then he steps aside. That's when the wealthy man's smile finally disappears. It doesn't vanish all at once, it slips, like a mask losing its grip. His eyes dart from face to face, searching for something familiar. Control, validation, someone who recognizes his status. He straightens his jacket anyway, old habit, old armor. The officials don't look at him. They walk past his row without slowing, past the phones, past the whispers, past the tension that's been suffocating the cabin for the last hour. They stop where the twins are. One of them, a woman with calm eyes and a voice trained to stay steady under pressure, steps forward. She looks directly at the twin still seated, then at his brother standing near the galley. Her face softens just enough to be human. "Mr. Harris," she says. Then she turns slightly, and Mr. Harris, names, spoken clearly, correctly. Ripple moves through the cabin. People glance at each other, confused, alert. "I'm sorry for what you've experienced today," the woman continues. No hesitation, no qualifiers, just an apology. The twin near the galley exhales slowly, not relief, recognition. He steps forward. "Thank you," he says. That's when the truth hits the plane like sudden turbulence. Not loud, but unavoidable. The woman gestures gently. "We'll need a few minutes," she says. "But for clarity, these gentlemen are Federal Aviation consultants." The words don't register right away. People process them slowly, like a sentence spoken in a language they don't expect to understand. Consultants, Federal. The officials continue, voices low but firm. Identical brothers, oversight specialists, discrimination investigators. The call placed earlier didn't go to a lawyer, it didn't go to social media, it went straight to oversight, straight to the system that airlines fear but rarely see in person. The wealthy man shifts in his seat. His confidence drains in stages, first disbelief, then irritation, then something closer to fear. He opens his mouth, then closes it. He looks around, waiting for someone to step in. Someone always does. No one does. One of the officials motions toward the cockpit. The captain nods again, more seriously this time. Another official pulls out a tablet. A screen lights up. Footage begins to play. Camera angles from the aisle, from the galley, from overhead. The shove. Clear, undeniable. The audio follows. Raised voices. Accusations. The word aggressive spoken before anything aggressive happened. Witness statements are taken quietly, one by one. Stories that felt certain minutes ago begin to crumble under simple questions. Timelines don't match, details blur. The truth doesn't need to shout, it just waits. The wealthy man finally speaks. "This is ridiculous," he says, but the words sound thin now, smaller. "I felt unsafe." An official looks at him for the first time, just once. Not angry, not impressed, just attentive. "Sir," he says evenly, "we've reviewed the footage." Silence answers back. The man swallows. His leg stops bouncing. His shoulders sink, just slightly. The air around him feels different. He's no longer at the center of the story. He's barely holding onto a role in it. "Sir," the official continues, "we're going to ask you to gather your belongings." The sentence lands softly, gently, but it carries weight. What? The man snaps, reflex fighting reality. I didn't do anything. No one responds right away. That's the hardest part. No argument, no drama, just quiet procedure. Two officials stand beside him, not touching, not rushing, just waiting. The man looks around again. This time, no one meets his eyes. He stands, slower than before, smaller than he remembers being. His jacket doesn't sit the same way on his shoulders. His watch feels heavier on his wrist. He gathers his bag in silence. No protests, no threats. The power he carried onto the plane doesn't follow him down the aisle. As he passes the twins, he doesn't look at them. He can't. The cabin watches him go. No cheers, no satisfaction, just a heavy stillness. The kind that comes when a belief collapses and people don't know what to replace it with. When the door closes behind him, the plane doesn't move. The officials turn back to the twins. You're welcome to remain on this flight, the woman says, or we can arrange private rebooking at the airline's expense. A pause. Passengers lean in slightly. Curious. Expecting something. The twin who had been seated stands. He smooths his jacket. He looks around the cabin slowly, letting his eyes meet faces that had judged him earlier. Not with anger, not with pride, with calm. We'll stay, he says. Then he steps into the aisle, not to confront, to speak. We didn't make this call for revenge, he says, his voice steady, carrying without effort. We made it so the next person doesn't have to sit through this. No applause follows. None is offered. None would fit. Instead, something heavier settles in. Guilt, recognition, the quiet realization that many people had chosen comfort over truth moments earlier. Phones lower, eyes drop. The officials nod. They begin documenting. Policies are triggered, reports opened, training mandated. This won't disappear when the plane lands. The twins return to their seats. Same row, same posture, but the space around them has changed. Dignity stands tall in first class now, unquestioned, unmoved. And as the cabin waits, grounded not by weather but by truth, one thing becomes clear to everyone watching. Power didn't win today. Humanity did. Hours pass before anyone boards again. Long enough for the anger to cool, long enough for the shock to sink in, long enough for the cabin to feel like a different place entirely. When the doors finally reopen, the sound is softer this time. No rush, no chatter. People step onto the plane with lowered voices, like they're entering a room where something sacred just happened and they don't want to disturb it. The twins board last, not because they were told to, because they chose to. They walk down the aisle together, the same measured pace, the same calm presence. But the way people look at them now is different. No suspicion, no side glances, no quiet judgments dressed up as concern. Instead, there's something else. Awareness. Recognition. A kind of unease that comes when people realize they were wrong and don't know how to make peace with it. They take their seats in first class. The same seats that hours earlier felt like a courtroom. Now they feel like a reminder of what happened, of what almost happened, of what changed. The captain steps out of the cockpit before the doors close. He doesn't speak over the intercom. He walks down the aisle himself, stops at their row, removes his cap. His posture isn't stiff anymore. It's human. I want to apologize, he says quietly, so only those nearby can hear. Not just as a captain, as a person. The twins look up at him. One nods, the other meets his eyes. No bitterness, no triumph, just acceptance. Behind them, a flight attendant stands frozen, the same one who looked away earlier, the same one who read policy while avoiding truth. She clutches a tablet to her chest like a shield. Her eyes flick up, then drop again. When she finally speaks, her voice shakes. I'm sorry, she whispers. It's the first real thing she's said all day. The twins don't respond right away. They don't need to. The apology sits there, heavy but necessary. Eventually, one of them nods. Forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility, but it opens a door. The doors close. The plane pushes back. This time, when it moves forward. As the engines roar and the aircraft lifts into the sky, something shifts. Not just altitude. Perspective. The air feels lighter even as the weight of the day settles in. Passengers stare out windows, lost in thought. Some replay the moment they judged too quickly. Some replay the moment they stayed silent. Some realize they saw themselves in the man who was escorted off, and they don't like what that reflection shows. The wealthy man is already gone by now. Off the plane, off the story. He lost nothing material that day. No charges, no arrest, no headlines dragging his name through the news cycle. He'll sleep in his own bed, fly another day, sit in another first-class seat somewhere else. But something cracked. The illusion that status grants immunity, the belief that money can bend truth, the comfort of knowing the system usually leans his way. He won't talk about this flight, not because he's ashamed, but because for the first time power didn't answer when he called, and the twins, they didn't gain anything you could touch. No reward, no compensation worth mentioning, no applause, no viral moment, no crowd chanting their names. They gained proof that dignity doesn't need to shout, that calm can be louder than accusation, that silence, when chosen instead of forced, can carry more power than any raised voice. They gained proof that the system doesn't change when people comply quietly. It changes when someone refuses to shrink, when someone decides that comfort is not worth their humanity. As the plane climbs above the clouds, sunlight spills across the cabin. White and soft, endless. The world below looks small from up here. Borders blur, cities turn into patterns, people become dots. One of the twins looks out the window and thinks about all the times they didn't make the call, all the times they swallowed anger to avoid trouble, all the times they walked away because the cost felt too high. This time they didn't. And because of that, policies were triggered, training mandated, reports filed, names recorded, a paper trail created where there used to be excuses. The next person who boards a plane and feels that familiar weight pressing down on their chest might not be alone, might not be dismissed, might be protected by what happened here. The cabin settles into quiet, not the tense quiet from before, a reflective one, the kind that makes people think instead of judge. A child a few rows back whispers a question to her mother. The mother pauses before answering, chooses her words carefully. That pause matters. The twins sit back, seatbelts fastened, hands resting calmly. They don't scan the cabin anymore. They don't need to. Their presence says enough. Never mistake quiet for weakness. Never confuse privilege with truth. And never assume you know who holds power until the moment they decide to use it. Because sometimes, the strongest voice in the room is the one that speaks only when it has to.